Nari Shakti Vandan. Constitution. 106th Amendment. Act 2023. Why in the news? Recently, Parliament passed Constitution 106th Amendment Act 2023 to provide for 1/3 reservation to women in the Lok Sabha, state assemblies, and the Assembly of NCT of Delhi. Key provisions of the Act. Articles amended. Article 239A. Articles inserted. Article 330A, Article 332A, and Article 334A. The amended Article 239AA says, reservation of 1/3 seats for women in the Legislative Assembly of the National Capital Territory, NCT of Delhi. Inserted Article 330A says, reservation of 1/3 seats for women in the House of People, Lok Sabha. It also includes reservation of 1/3 seats for women under total number of seats, reserved for SCs, STs under Article 330. Article 332A says, reservation of 1/3 seats for women in the Legislative Assembly of every state. It also includes reservation of 1/3 seats for women under total number of seats, reserved for SCs, STs under Article 332. Article 334A says, provisions of this Act shall come into effect after delimitation, after the first census taken after the commencement of this Act. Sunset Clause. Provisions relating to reservation of seats for women shall cease to have effect after the expiration of 15 years. The reservation for women, however, can be extended by the Parliament by law. Periodic rotation of seats reserved for women after each subsequent delimitation, as Parliament may, by law, determine. Provisions of this Act shall not affect any representation in legislative assemblies and the Lok Sabha until their dissolution. Earlier attempt at political empowerment of women 1992, reservation for women in panchayats and municipalities through 73rd and 74th Amendments respectively. 1996, 81st Amendment Bill was introduced to reserve 1/3 seat for women in Lok Sabha and state assemblies. 1998 and 1999, similar attempts were made. 2008, last such attempt was made in 2008, when a bill for reservation of women was introduced and passed in the Rajya Sabha. Later, this bill lapsed. Need for women's reservation in legislature, underrepresentation of women in legislature. Only about 14% of the members in Indian Parliament are women, the highest so far. Average representation of women in state assemblies in around 8% only, and some states like Mizoram have no women legislators. According to the Inter-Parliamentary Union, India has a fewer percentage of women in the lower house than its neighbors such as Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. Political underrepresentation of women is a major reason for India's poor performance in the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report, 127th out of 146 in 2023. Patriarchal nature of political parties. Affirmative action for women is imperative to better their condition since political parties are inherently patriarchal. It would also help overcome the entry barriers like money and muscle power for women leadership at the state and national level. Gender sensitization of public policy. Women representation in the decision-making process is essential to address problems like lower female labor force participation, increasing crime rates against women, etc. Evidence from the reservation at local level. According to assessments by Oxfam India, reservation for women at local level led to a significant increase in the reporting of crimes, improved access to basic amenities like drinking water, schools, etc. Nudging women-led development. It can enable greater participation of women as public representatives in policymaking at the national and state level. Concerns with the Act. Against inequality. Idea of reservation runs counter to the principle of equality enshrined in the Constitution, as women may not be competing on merit. Impact on voters' choices. Reservation of seats for women in legislature restricts voters' choices and runs counter the idea of self-determination. Non-homogeneous group. Women are not a homogeneous community, such as a caste group.
Therefore, the arguments made for caste-based reservations cannot be made for women. Less impact on political empowerment of women. There are larger issues of electoral reforms such as criminalization of politics, internal democracy in political parties, etc. that might act as an impediment to political empowerment of women. Disparity across states. The Act provides for reservation of 1/3 RD seats across all Lok Sabha seats, as against provision of reserving 1/3 RD seat in each state, UT, as mentioned in 2008 bill.
Rotation of seats. The Act provides for rotation of seats after every delimitation exercise, as against after every general election to the Parliament/state legislative assemblies. Reservation in Rajya Sabha and Legislative Councils Act does not contain any provision for reservation for women in Rajya Sabha and Legislative Councils of the states. Geeta Mukherjee Committee, 1996, recommended providing reservation for women in Rajya Sabha and Legislative Councils as well. Way forward. Timely implementation, time-bound conduct, and publication of the census data and delimitation exercise should be done to ensure timely implementation of the Act. Capacity building. Involve civil society and other institutions for training and mentorship of women leaders at local level to ensure their effective mobilization at state and national level.